Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's BooksWithBethx here, and welcome back. I am so sorry that there's not been any videos for the past 2 weeks. You've probably not even noticed, let's be honest. But obviously, I was on well, you can't even tell. I was on holiday. I do have a bit of a tan. We had awful weather the first 2 days though, so it wasn't the best weather, or sunbathing weather even. I didn't achieve my goal of reading 5 books when I was away, but it's okay. It's fine. I did my best. I did what I could. If you'd like to see what I read when I was away, I have posted a holiday reading wrap-up on my TikTok. I can link it down below, but obviously it's also on my page. I have also done my reading wrap-up again over on TikTok. I thought I could film it on here, but is anyone going to watch it when it's posted in the middle of the month? In the middle of the following month? Probably not. So again, I'll link that down below. You can watch both my August reading wrap-up and my September holiday reading wrap up if you would like. But we're not talking about that today. We are discussing all the books I would like to read in autumn, also known as my autumn TBR, although I feel like I won't be getting to most of these because there's like more books than I would normally read each month, so I'll probably be carrying some of these over into the winter months. I personally categorise autumn/fall as being September, October, November, and then December, January, February as being winter. I think most people probably do the same. So I have categorised these books into 3 different categories based on what I tend to read. So usually in autumn, I tend to start leaning towards the darker books, more mystery books, more thrillery books, more gothic books, and more classics. So if you don't know, I do have a goal to read, I think it was 4 classics this year, and so far I've only read 2. And those 2 are The Hobbit and The Fellowship of the Ring. I'm classing them as classics. They came out over 50 years ago. They're classics in my mind, and some of these actually are quite recent classics as well, but I want to read all of these, so let's see if I get to them. I will start with the classics category. I don't own a physical copy of most of these. I own a lot of them on my Kindle, and I'm not going to be loading up my Kindle for each of them because that's going to take ages. So I'll just put an image of the cover of them up here. For the ones that I do own a copy of, obviously I will show them, but there's not that many. So the first book is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I will say actually this is available on Kindle for 99p this month. I literally bought it this month. You can usually read it for free, but I just bought it because, yeah, this is one book that I have actually tried reading before. I think I had to read it for university, and I don't think I ever had a chance to finish it, because in university, if you don't know, if you're studying an English degree, luckily I was only doing half an English degree, so I was doing half English, half history. So usually in an English degree, depending on the number of modules you take in, you'll have at least 1 book a week, if not 2, if not 4, if you're doing a full English degree. So I had 2 books to read a week, and obviously some of those had to be put on the back burner a little bit because I didn't have time to read that many. And Rebecca was one of those, but I did enjoy what I was reading. And I know there's a Netflix adaptation as well, which I need to watch, but maybe I'll read it first and then watch it over spooky season. So this seems very similar to Jane Eyre. So you have this, it's quite a modern classic, I'd say, but you follow this woman called Rebecca, and she gets married to a man, but this man was a widow. He had already lost his past wife. And he's a very rich man. She moves into his massive castle mansion property thing, and it seems to be haunted, and there's like ghosts and things like that. This time of year, I find is perfect for ghost stories. I don't know if that's just me, but I love a ghost story this time of year. Definitely want to try to actually read that this time. I've got it on my Kindle, I've got no excuses, and I've got my target of 4 classics, so if I read these that are on this list, then I would have done pretty well. Next up will be a reread, and that is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I reread Jane Eyre last year, so I feel like it's time for Wuthering Heights. I do love Wuthering Heights, but it's not a romance. Everyone keeps categorising it as a romance. It's a very abusive romance if it is that, but it's a lovely story. It's not a lovely story. What am I saying? I really enjoy it. It's very long, multi-POV. You're jumping back and forward in time, following Kathy and Heathcliff throughout their lives. You've watched them grow up from being young children when Kathy's father first adopted Heathcliff, to them sort of falling in love, and then her having to marry another man because that's what life was back then. You marry men for the privileges that they gave you rather than marrying for love. And she had to marry a richer man. She was quite rich herself, her family was very rich, but she had to marry a richer man to stay within her class. She couldn't marry Heathcliff, who was a poor orphan boy. So yeah, it's a very interesting story, very dark story, a lot of death, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of torture and things like that. So I'm very excited to actually reread this. I've been wanting to reread it for quite some time. I thought, what's the best time to reread it than spooky season? There's ghosts, there's ghost elements to this. I feel like it's the perfect time to read it, so I want to get to that. So next on my list is Beloved by Toni Morrison. Now I think this would be classed as a modern classic because it came out in 1987. Is that too new for a classic? I mean, it was coming up to 40 years ago now, so maybe. But this has been one that's been on my list for a while. I believe I've read other Toni Morrison books. I'm pretty sure I have. So this is another ghost story, but this is following an ex-slave in America. And she is haunted by the ghost of her baby, who's called Beloved. What more can I say? They basically think that the main character is going crazy. She's obviously seeing things, and there's these weird noises and things happening around her. And yeah, it just sounds really interesting, quite scary. Might even be classed as a horror. Is it classed as a horror? No, it's not. It's not marked as a horror. It's marked as magical realism, though. So even better. But yeah, it's like an African-American, I was going to say horror again, ghost story. So yeah, sounds quite interesting, and I've wanted to read this for a while. I'm pretty sure I own this as well, and I have owned it for a while. I don't know why I've never read it. But again, perfect for spooky season. Why have I not read it? Who knows? And then the final classic, because I feel like my friend Lara would kill me if I didn't put this on my list. She's probably not even watching this, but Lara, I've put it on my list just for you, is Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is Lara's favourite ever book ever written. This is the reason why she studied Gothic literature. I picked it as well because I was like, yeah, go for it. I want to learn a bit more about Gothic literature. And I had to put on a proper horror on my list because Beloved may kind of be horror. Rebecca might be. Dracula definitely is 100% horror. But it also has those interesting Victorian elements of like hidden sexuality and stuff like that. Do I need to explain Dracula? Probably not. So this is quite a messy novel. You follow at the start a character called Jonathan, who is a solicitor, and he's going across to Transylvania to help Count Dracula with the purchase of a property in London. Yeah, in London. But there's a lot of weird discoveries he makes about his client, including deaths and injuries and ships being destroyed and stuff like that. And yeah, it's very messy, all over the place, but it's very much of the era it was written in. It follows like vampires, vampire hunters. A lot of people say this is the original vampire story. It isn't. The original one was actually called The Vampire. I wouldn't recommend reading it. It's a very difficult read. Was it by John Polidori, I believe? And I'm pretty sure it was written about... Oh, who was it written about? One of those prolific authors at the time. I'm pretty sure he wrote about one of them. Let me double check. Yeah, so it was written by John Polidori about Lord Byron. So Lord Byron was going around wooing loads of women, basically destroying their lives and then effing off and going off to another woman. And that's basically what The Vampire started as. So it's these characters that go around, take what they want, do what they want, anything sexually, and then going off elsewhere and destroying the people they left behind in the process. I thought you might be interested in a little bit of historical education on that. But yeah, I need to read this. I think I may have read it, but I think it was like not a child's version, but like a dumbed down version that I must have read when I was a teenager. I had quite a few of those. I had like Frankenstein, and there's like an Osborne version, I think it was. But yeah, need to actually read the proper version of this. I think it's probably quite long. Yeah, 488 pages on this Goodreads version, so might take a while, but I feel like I need to read, especially directly over Halloween, I need to read a horror, and this will be that horror. So now we're getting on to the more modern releases of books that I want to read this month. They're not all dark, let's say, especially not this first one, but I'm going to start with the standalone section. So first up, because I haven't read any of his work recently, I've only read one of his books this year, Wallbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I need to really get to this because I can't believe I've only read one of his books this year. I really need to get to this, and that's why it's on my autumn TBR, because I want to read it in autumn. It's not going to be dark, it's not going to be scary, it's just a standalone, it's part of the Cosmere, but it's technically a standalone fantasy book that I need to get to, and it's quite big, but maybe this will be a November read, and then maybe I'll try and get to Stormlight Archives in December. That's not going to work. That's not going to happen because I want to finish Lord of the Rings as well in December. I can dream. But yeah, I need to get to this. So this is a world which surrounds biochromatic magic. So magic is the colours in the world. They are able to manipulate the colour to do what they need to do. And you follow... It's a story of two sisters who happen to be princesses. It also follows a god king that one of them has to marry, a lesser god, and an immortal trying to undo the mistakes he made hundreds of years ago. So, twisty and turny. I've heard great things. It's one of his more feminine-based work. I know that Mistborn, your main character is Vin, but she's like one of the few female characters in that. Whereas this obviously has the two main princesses characters, and there's a woman wielding a sword on the front cover, so I'm sure she'll play a big part in it. So yeah, I need to get to this one in autumn. So the next standalone fantasy book that I want to read is House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. Although I say fantasy, it's horror, but also mystery thriller, but also YA, but also paranormal. So this sounds really intriguing. In brief, you follow your main character, Iris, who is 17, and something happened to her and her two sisters when they were a lot younger, and they don't remember what it was, but they all have this crescent-shaped scar on their neck. She spent most of her life trying to avoid what happened, but then one of her sisters goes missing. And when trying to uncover what happened, she starts getting stalked by these weird men. A body falls out of her sister's ceiling. There's weird memories that are all coming back into her forefront of her mind. So it's very twisty, very dark, apparently paranormal, so it's probably ghost-related things. It sounded quite vampire-y though, the crescent at the base of the neck. So yeah, that'll be quite an interesting one. Quite dark. I think probably perfect for spooky season if I can get to it. If not, then maybe it'll fall into November. But yeah, it's definitely on my list, and I already own this on Kindle. Then the next one, it's actually... I think it's sort of a retelling of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and this is Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno-Garcia. So this is an author I've seen everywhere at the minute. I think pretty sure she's released some like really highly rated books. I haven't read anything from her. This book actually won the Best Horror Goodreads Choice Award in 2020. So again, another horror book, another standalone horror book, and this sounds just really intriguing. So when our main character receives a letter from her newlywed cousin asking for her help, our main character Naomi heads over to that property to find out what's going on. And it seems like the house is haunting them. I'm not too sure, but our main character is quite headstrong. She's not typically the type of person who'll be going out of her way, running rounds, solving mysteries, getting clues and things like that. She's very much like a debutante. She's like all dressed up with dresses and makeup and things like that all the time, but she's happy to like get stuck in and try and find out what's happening, and she's not willing to take any ish from her cousin's new husband or her father-in-law or anything like that. So it sounds really interesting. Sounds like quite a powerful female character. Sounds like a mystery thriller type thing with good horror elements. So yeah, another one I definitely need to try and get into next month, ready for spooky season, I think. But maybe I'll read Rebecca first, and then I can compare the two. And now onto the series, because clearly I need to start more series on this channel. Not like I used to do a video on this. I've probably started about 20 different series this year, which is not great. But this is Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerry Maniscalco. Probably pronounced that wrong. This is quite a popular book. I've seen it everywhere across BookTok recently, and I believe a third one has just been released or is about to be released. Or it might be like a separate one set in the world, but not these characters. This is a YA romance, another dark one with witches and paranormal elements and mystery again. So sounds perfectly dark for the spooky months. So in this, you follow Amelia and her twin sister Vittoria, and they're both witches. And they live secretly among humans. No one knows that they've got powers. One night, Vittoria misses their dinner service at their family's restaurant, and Amelia soon finds her body destroyed, desecrated, not in a very good state. So Amelia sets out to find her sister's killer and seeks vengeance at any cost, as the Goodreads says, even if that means that she needs to use forbidden magic. Sounds very dark, very gritty, and should be perfect for spooky season. This one may have to fall into November. I've given myself way too much to read, haven't I? As always. God, I'm going to have to try and plan this TBR. I'm going to have book club books to read as well. Hopefully they'll pick one of these so I can then use that as an excuse to read them. But yeah, it sounds really good. And it's another series. So if I enjoy the first book, I can then read the second one, and then the third one / the new one set in this world. I believe the new one's an adult story, so maybe it's slightly set in the world but different. We'll see. But yeah, that sounds really intriguing, and yeah, looking forward to reading that one. So we've got another spooky witch-based book here, another YA one, and this is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Morin. This was nominated for both the Best Debut Novel and Best Young Adult Fantasy and Sci-Fi awards for Goodreads in 2019 as well, so even better. But in this, you follow a witch, and she escapes from her coven and took shelter in a city where you can't be a witch. If you're a witch, you'll be killed. It's pretty similar to Kingdom of the Wicked, let's be honest. And there she meets a man called Reed, who has lived his life by one principle: thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. So he's not supposed to be anywhere near a witch. But somehow something happens and they both end up married to each other. So he's the type of person that will kill a witch. She's the type of person that will run away from a witch killer, because I'm guessing she's not a killer herself. And it says here, the war between witches and the church is an ancient one, and Lou's most dangerous enemies bring a fate worse than fire. Unable to ignore her growing feelings, yet powerless to change what she is, a choice must be made. And love makes fool of us all. So this sounds like it's an enemies to lovers, romance, paranormal, witch, horror, almost horror. Probably isn't that horror-y actually. Story. So I think enemies to lovers is probably one of my favourite romance tropes, I'd say. And if it's done well, then it's good. In some cases, they say it's enemies to lovers and it's really not. Like Fourth Wing is not enemies to lovers. It's not even rivals to lovers. It's pretending to hate each other to lovers, I'd say. Whereas the Jasadair is pure enemies to lovers. Like if the two characters try to kill each other, that's enemies to lovers, okay? So I feel like this would be enemies to lovers, considering he's marrying someone who's completely against his principles. It's whether she thinks he's an enemy as well. So we'll see. And I think it's always good to get a bit of romance in as well. With all those dark books that I've got listed on here, I do need a little bit of positivity in my life. So yeah, this might be a good one to break up some of the darker books that are on my list. So I've got another physical copy finally, and that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. So if you don't know, I'm currently reading the Shadow and Bone series, so I was kind of hoping to have read that first before getting to this, because I feel like Six of Crows probably will fit in this as well, but I don't know if I'll have read Ruin and Rising in time for Six of Crows to be part of this list. If I have, then that's part of this list as well. But yeah, Ninth House definitely is. This is a dark academia novel set in Yale, I believe. Yeah, Yale. And we follow a main character, Alex, who was hoping for a fresh start when going to Yale, but she has been tasked with monitoring Yale's secret societies, including a very dark one full of forbidden magic and things like that. And she found a dead girl. There was a dead girl on campus, and Alex is the only person who is actually looking into what happened. So yeah, sounds very interesting. I'm guessing one of those secret societies was the person who killed the girl, maybe using magic. So I feel like this fits quite well. Dark Academia definitely gives me autumn, Halloween vibes. So this will be the perfect time to read this. And actually, I've also got The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik on this list. So that's the second book in the Sholomance series. I'll just throw this in here. I read the first one, was it beginning of summer? I think it was beginning of summer. It didn't really fit the summer vibes, but I really enjoyed it. So that's also on my list as well. So that's another Dark Academia that is very intriguing to me. And this one actually follows, in case you didn't realise, a deadly school. So all the characters who are able to use magic in this world have to go into, well, they don't have to go into this school, but you're more likely to survive if you go into this deadly school. You either survive the deadly school with 1 in 4 chances, or you survive outside in the world with 1 in 20 chances to survive. So most people opt to go into the school. And at the end of the year, when you graduate, or at the end of school, when you graduate, you're all put into this, you'll go down to the lower level of the building. Would you call it a building? I don't know. Where there's a lot of monsters and you have to try and escape. And it's all about like creating alliances and things like that. And our main character, Elle, has no friends. She doesn't want any friends. She doesn't want to have any alliances. And throughout the book, she's slowly like defrosting a little bit. Her heart's defrosting a bit. She's letting people in. So yeah, it's really good in that respect. But I'm very intrigued. It ended up on a cliffhanger, so I need to get to the next one ASAP, which I'm hoping to do during spooky season. So fingers crossed we'll get to that. We're almost there. 2 more books. The first one is Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is the first book in the Greenbone Saga series. I've heard really good things about this recently. I know Emily Fox just recently finished it and she's constantly raving about it. So let's maybe go, right, I need to read this. And I got it for 99p on Kindle, but I think that was last month. So I think it's like one of their daily deal things. So you won't be able to get that for 99p now. But I've heard incredible things about this. It basically follows 2 different crime syndicate groups and they're all fighting for control over the same island, and I think they use jade as part of the magic system, I believe. And I'm sure there's more to it than that, but I think there might be like a Romeo and Juliet style element in there as well. Romance, just a lot of like mob fighting, but also magic, but also sci-fi. That's just everything. So this sounds really good, so I really want to get to this. And finally, Belladonna by Adeline Grace. I believe the next one's just come out. Is that Foxglove? I think Foxglove has just been released. So if I can get to Belladonna, then I can then read Foxglove and be completely caught up. But this is a gothic romance, fantasy, YA, paranormal book that sounds really interesting and intriguing. So in this, we follow our main character, Singer. She's 19 years old, she's an orphan, and she's had various different guardians throughout her life, but they're more interested in her money than in her. And somehow each of them end up dead until she ends up moving in with her final family, the Hawthorns, who are a very eccentric family. The mother has recently died, they don't know how. The father is getting over that by throwing loads of parties. His son is trying to sort of retain control of their family's reputation. And the daughter has got this strange illness. And then they start being haunted by the mother who's died's ghost. So it's very interesting. That I guess there's going to be a mystery around finding out who the killer was, if there was a killer, or finding out what happened to her. But I believe death is also involved, as in the figure death. So I don't know if that'll be where the romance comes in. Could be, maybe. But yeah, sounds quite interesting. Again, I'm pretty sure I own this on Kindle, so I'll be looking forward to reading this. And yeah, just another one to add to my very long list, my very long autumn TBR list, which again probably will fall into December. Let's be honest. That is it. That is the 12 books that I want to read over the autumn months, aka pretty much just October and November, because we are halfway through September and I've already built my TBR for this month. So you'll definitely be seeing these on my TBR for the next 2 months. I'm sure there'll be other books thrown in there as well if I'm continuing on series and things like that, but very much looking forward to these. They all sound really exciting. They all sound perfect for this time of year. They all sound a bit dark and a bit spooky, but there's also a bit of joy in there. And then other than Warbreaker, they are pretty much all horror, paranormal, magical books. So very excited to read all of these. Have you read any of these? Is there any books you're particularly expecting to read over Halloween or even over autumn as a whole? Let me know in the comments. And not that I need to add any more to this list, but if I can grow this list a little bit more, if there's any books that you absolutely loved, would give 20 stars out of 10, you know, that sort of thing, let me know because I can then add it to this. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.